This episode of Getting Tabled is brought to you by Valhalla Hobby. Valhalla Hobby can be found at valhallahobby.com. If you use the code TABLED at checkout, you can get 5% off your first order over $100. Thank you for supporting the people that support us, and thank you to Valhalla Hobby for continuing to support our channel. We greatly appreciate it. Hello future people, welcome to Getting Tabled. I'm your host Jason the Bruce for this evening. I'm going to be leading you through this holiday special. Yep, we're doing it again. It's been a couple of years since we did the last one. We're going to be going over some of our highlights and lowlights for the year. Some of these will be directly things that we actually talked about on the podcast throughout the year. There'll be some highlights for an interview that we did with Owen a month or so ago. But there's going to be some stuff that we'll touch on that'll be lowlights as well. That is the nature of the industry. You can't always like everything that you see. But we're going to start off with a story from Major Socks.
Hello, featured people. Major Socks here from Getting Tabled. Bruce has asked me to do this little video just to kind of discuss some three small things that I've worked on. I'm guessing this year. It's kind of our little yearly review recap of what we've done. As you all know, I moved up here to Alabama summertime frame, so moving was kind of been challenging. There are no gaming groups here that play games that I have. But besides that, my schooling is kind of keeping me busy too. Hopefully next year when I'm teaching a different officer course, I'll be able to find more free time to expand and try and create a gaming group.
We'll return back to Major Socks. I've broken up his video a little bit as he talks about different subjects, just to keep things moving. Up next, I want to show some highlights of the interview that we had with Owen last month.
We have a special guest. We have Owen from, and I'm going to say this wrong, but I'm going to say Mythic Games.
You nailed it.
Oh,
and hello. Thank you for having me. You know, I kind of contractually obligated to do the obvious one. So, working on some models for a game called Sunshard Embrun. We may or may not be talking about that later. So,
What got you into gaming? I mean, first and foremost.
Yeah, great question. So, you know, you can probably see in my face, I'm not the youngest person on the planet, or probably even on this podcast. I got into Magic the Gathering in the 90s, as all the cool kids did. And at my local game store, saw a really cool game called Necromunda, and went, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life, and played that hard for about a year until I discovered music and dating, and totally put it aside for 7-8 years. Got out of college, started working a full-time job. A bunch of my friends had joined the military around 2001. They all finished their tours, came back, we started hanging out, and wanted to do something that wasn't just going to the bar every night, both for the sake of our livers and our wallets. And all decided to get back into Warhammer 40k, which then we decided, no, that was a terrible idea, and got into War Machine and Hordes, and then it was all downhill from there. So, and here I am. Gonna be part of the beast. I mean, I like to joke that, you know, half of being a fan of Games Workshop is hating Games Workshop, and it kind of feels like that online at least. It was really, really hard to get over that skill gap from I am completely new to wargaming to I have a painted army 20 years ago. Because at best, you were looking at the pages of a White Dwarf and trying to copy step by step the results of a painting with no idea what the intermediate step looked like. In the age of YouTube, with videos, I think it's a lot easier. And let's be honest, the hobby tools have gotten a lot better. Like, as much as people have nostalgia for it, the paint 20 years ago kind of sucked.
It really
Contrast
did.
paint comparatively is really awesome. So I think it's easier than ever to get something painted. Now, people will still struggle with, you know, geez, this doesn't look like, you know, to name drop a YouTuber, Miniax paint job on my first try. Well, it's never going to. It takes practice to get there. Two things I saw across America where everyone who was a consistent War Machine player could tell you one or more bad experiences about someone trying to win at all cost. But they would also tell you how much they loved their local press ganger, which was the, you know, person that organized events. They had a really, really strong community of volunteers I think that did wonders for the game. And I think, I'm not a business person, but when you look at when Mark III really started to fall off from a retail perspective, it was after they disbanded their volunteer core. I think that, my belief is people buy games from people in general. Obviously, we're doing podcasts. We probably are the exceptions there, but that seems to be the case most of the time. And I think when you stop having that person to buy from, you stop seeing sales. Well, and you have to pay for the rules development. You have to pay for the concept art. That's not free. I can tell you that firsthand. So if you're just trying to create a public domain character from a role-playing game and put it on my Manufactory, you can sell it for 99 cents and still make a profit due to volume. If you're trying to create a bespoke thing for your game, I think people should be willing to accept, okay, this is going to be pricier than that 99 cents, but there's a reason for that, and it's not just greed. Like when we did our pricing, we wanted to keep in mind, a lot of what we're doing is direct consumer. As a 3D printing company, we also want to involve the game stores somehow if we can. So, we, for example, will sell store print licenses. We're not going to sell that to someone via a Patreon so they can sell it on Etsy. We think the stores need to be able to get it. I see so many other 3D printing companies, though, price themselves at the, $8 for a printed model plus shipping level. I don't know how they make money on that if they try to sell that to a game store. That gets painful. So, if you're including that in your business plan, it does definitely affect price. I always like the control armies, the armies that say no. I've always found that really interesting. I could reach over to my desk for Bushido, which we talked about before the show started. I do play the Kinchi, so they are also kind of the like we're going to play a little bit differently armies. So
here we go. Here is the ultimate question. What is your favorite dead game?
I think I'd have to say Dark Age, a game by Dark Age Games, and then later Cool Mini or Not. I really fell in love with that game. I miss it every day. There's a lot of other great dead games. I'm not going to pretend this is anything anyone could ever rank objectively, but absolutely subjectively, I think Dark Age wins. During the pandemic shutdown, Andrew had been working with some sculptors to get models that would be suitable proxies for unreleased models in Dark Age sculpted, just as a service to the community, which I thought was great. And the models looked fantastic. And he said, I've always had this idea for a game. I'm like, well, that's really cool. He's like, do you think you could help me write some rules for it? And it was, well, my job's kind of slow and I'm still getting paid and I can't go anywhere or do anything. So sure, why not? We'll give it a try. What do I like to actually play? What are people going to want to play? And made the game that I wanted to play. Around that time, Eden had stopped getting support. Dark Age had stopped getting support. I looked at, in the States, Miniature Market was like the online distributor. There was literally nothing they were selling that I was excited to play. So I said, well, let's actually take this seriously. If nobody's going to make the game I want to play, I'm going to make the game I want to play. So, okay, do or die moment. We had all the starter sets for the first 4 factions. We started playtesting 10, picked the 4 we thought would have the best shot through the gate. Got everything sculpted, printed it up, went to Captain Con last year and said, okay, I painted them up as best I could. We made demo boards as best I could. Let's give this an honest shake. And if people respond to it, let's keep going. And if they don't, hey, we give it an honest go. Didn't work out. We did our demos on a 2x2. Everyone went, oh my gosh, another 2x2 game. I'm so happy someone's doing a 2x2 game. And the game, honestly, was better on the 2x2. So it was, okay, cool, great. We'll make that pivot. That one's easy. Did some balance testing, kicking the tires around that. I'd like to think I'm pretty okay at designing rules. Neither Andrew and I are sculpt, but Andrew is an incredible art director. His big hobby is jamming RPGs, and I think he's a very good storyteller. So I think the universe is very interesting. I think he found someone that makes really incredible models. Just to try to put an actual measurable metric on that, we lost our original sculptor, unfortunately, because he got poached by Games Workshop. So I feel pretty strongly he's pretty okay. I have browbeat a few friends into playtesting with me. There's not a better way to put it. I think one of the things where we got a little discouraged and worried was we initially put out a call to communities we both were in. Hey, we're starting this game. We'd like to get some playtesters, and got a lot of positive feedback, and then put out the rules and nobody said anything. Which was are you just being nice? I think it really is free rules, great, and I have to do work now. So I know I've had a lot more success. Yeah, and it kind of breaks your heart because you're like, I'd almost feel better if you told me the game was bad. Saying nothing is just like, oh. I think, talking to people in person, one of the things Andrew did, to his great credit, he's a coder by trade. He set up a full working, scalable, because it's linked to a database, TTS environment. So every time we make a rules change, it automatically updates in the TTS. It's been really, really handy for, particularly during COVID, but now even more so, working with people when we can't get in person. We have a really robust way to test that. We do make that available for free too. So if folks are looking for that, happy to send you the instance. If people want to play our game, we are not gonna gatekeep that.
The next thing I want to talk about is actually something that I'd been waiting for a number of years. I'd spoken about it a number of times in the podcast over the last few years. I've spoken about it ever since then, about how happy I was that it finally happened. And I'm talking about the release of the Crute. I know, as a large whole, the online Warhammer community kind of received them as a bit of a mixed bag, largely because the active people online tend to only really favour the things that are really powerful in the game from a competitive point of view. And personally, I'm just not interested in that conversation. I'm not saying being competitively minded is a problem. I'm not saying that you're a bad person for being competitively minded. I'm just not interested in that conversation. The thing that was very exciting for me was there was a point in my hobby when I was very active in Warhammer, and one of my dreams always was to have a full Crute army. I haven't played Warhammer on a regular basis for a long time now, since 7th. 7th is the point where I jumped out, and I've never really gotten back in again. When this came out, my first thought was that it was going to be another one of those boxes, and we'd had a lot of problems with this, that it was going to be a lot of problems trying to get my hands on it. Thankfully, that didn't end up being a problem. Every single one of the models that they came out with looked phenomenal in that initial box set. Absolutely phenomenal. I know that there's one particular model in the release that not everybody likes, because it's somebody that's riding a non-Crute creature and it didn't feel like it fit. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be a Crute creature. I actually don't mind it. I completely understand why a lot of the Crute fans don't like it. I just genuinely don't have a problem with it. I think it looks quite nice. I had a disappointment early on when I found out that there wasn't going to be a combat patrol. And up until that point, it kind of felt like there was supposed to be. And there were very heavy rumours talking about the fact that it was coming, and then it just never seemed to arrive until about 2 months ago. I have the issue of White Dwarf where they dropped that. Yes, I will follow up and give thoughts on that when it eventually happens. When I eventually get this on the table, this will be the first time I have played Warhammer since 7th edition. So when I tell you that that was something I was looking forward to for a very long time, it was a serious comment. And it was a comment that I meant so strongly that it brought me back to buying Warhammer again. Something that I almost swore I would never do, because the last time I started buying Warhammer again, I ended up regretting it and selling it. But this was maybe my favourite release Games Workshop-wise this year. I really do like the Halflings. The Halflings are a lot of fun. Still need to finish my video on them. But the Crute was my favourite thing they did this year. And it's not even close. It's not even vaguely close. They are in front by a very, very large margin.
So that's my conversation on the Crute. I was very excited about this. That was obviously recorded a couple of days ago, hence the change of clothes. There's only a couple of things I didn't touch on at that point. The first, I just want to point out, one of the reasons I was so excited for that release wasn't just that I'd waited so long. It's that, quite frankly, I'd given up hope of it ever happening. I'd legitimately given up hope of it ever happening. And then not only did I actually get new Crute, but I got the entire Crute release that I always wanted. Yes, I didn't get the Great Narlock or the Narlocks. We will get those in the future at some point. That is obviously clear at this stage. But I was really, really excited for that. Up next, George is going to be talking about Mythic Games. As somebody that had backed one of their Kickstarters and lost money as a result of it, George has been following this story for quite some time. He's very well researched on it. He does look up stuff for this as he's talking about it. It's a very casual, upfront, frank conversation. I would highly recommend paying some attention to this, not only because, yes, it'll give you all of the information on the Mythic saga, but also, quite frankly, you might pick up some things to watch out for future Kickstarters if you're considering backing them.
Hello, future people, and welcome to the year-end roundup. It's a pretty uneventful year for me, excitement-wise. I'm gonna start off. It's one topic. It's not a couple different things. It's one topic, essentially. So back December 9th, 2022. CMON and Monolith Games bought a bunch of intellectual properties from Mythic Games. That was the way 2022 ended for Mythic. 2023, not a lot happened. Starting in 2024, this is when things really started to look bad. They sold Hell the Last Saga. That was the last Kickstarter that I was on the hook for, or Mythic was on the hook for me, however you want to look at it. And they sold that to CMON. And that told me two things. One, told me I was going to get a game eventually. If CMON is anything, they deliver. They're not going to have issues. They've got a better track record and way more consistent than Mythic ever has been. But in turn with that was selling that intellectual property and Anasir, I think is how it's pronounced. That was a really, really bad sign for Mythic Games. It just two of their big headline crowdfunding campaigns that did raise quite a bit of money, and they're essentially done. Selling those two. At that point, they were just finishing Wave 1 delivery of Darkest Dungeon, which Red Hook Games, the developer of the video game, had contributed money to get shipments done. Mythic had asked for additional funding to get the game shipped to backers, and they did complete that. Here's the problem in 2024 that, really nailed it. They said that there would not be additional ask for Wave 2, and when Wave 2 rolled around, there was an additional ask. And that upset a lot of people. Siege 6, Rainbow 6, whatever people are calling it, there was an additional ask for that, and it was a very substantial one. There was a lot of people who were like, I'm not doing this. Mythic did have the option of, you keep the same amount that you backed, but your pledge level drops. So you still spent the same money, but you got less stuff, which some people did bite that bullet. Some people did contribute. And I'd really love to know the numbers, but we'll never find that out, of how many of the thousands of backers, because when you're talking thousands of backers, I'd really love to know how many coughed up, how many said, I'm done, I'm walking away, I'm cutting my loss, and whatnot. Because part of the problem with, and I don't believe this was an intentional thing that Leo of Mythic did. I think this was just, they got over their head, and instead of admitting it, they continue to just not talk about it and let it get worse. Because we started the year off, we were going to get monthly updates. We didn't. And that was in 2023. And again, 2024 came around, and the updates were lacking. Fast forward a few months, Mythic shut down their Facebook page. Which, along with the sale of Hell, they also shut down comments on the Facebook page for Hell. You couldn't comment on it anymore, so they'd shut down the comments on that. And then I want to say it was probably September, October timeframe was when I noticed that Mythic had shut off their Facebook page, which in the day of social media and everything's on some form of social media, whether it's, Twitter and X, Facebook's, Instagram, whatever platform you choose to be on, Facebook being the biggest one of them all. If you shut down your page and stop communicating, that is a very terrible sign. And that's when I started digging. Really didn't find much until, I want to say, it was about midway through October. And this was on Board Game Geek is where this was actually posted, and since then lots of people have picked it up on it. We had mentioned it, but as of the 1st of October 2024, Mythic went into liquidation, and that's a more common phrase used over in Europe. In the United States, it's they're going out of business. They're selling off everything to appease their creditors and for the creditors to get their money back. Which is the worst absolute sign. Is this something intentional? No. This is the last act that they can do. Because if they don't pay off as much as they can, they're on the hook for a lot. Depending. And unfortunately, I've not seen a lot of updates on the active pages. I don't know how fulfilled the Siege 6 delivery was. For those who are still waiting for stuff, I don't know if there are any. If there's any product for them to sell and send to backers, who knows? The thing in question is Wave 2 of Darkest Dungeon. They put out their request, the ask for more money to produce and ship Wave 2. They fell short on numbers for language packs, and their solution was to do PDFs for the rule books. But the game itself was not going to be that native language. And from my understanding, I don't think Wave 2 has shipped. I'm going to use the power of the internet while I record this and ramble to see if that's the case. But I don't think so. Did Wave 2 of Darkest Dungeon ship? And I haven't seen anything about it. I haven't seen anyone saying, I've got my Wave 2, thank God, finally. Let's see. Yeah, so October 16th is when this posted. Looks like Wave 2 is down the water. Mythic Games filed for bankruptcy, has gone to liquidation. So yeah, I don't think Wave 2 is happening. So that means every single backer that did a foreign language option. So I don't know what those were, but they've gotten nothing. So those who did, were able to get their Wave stuff one for English and whatnot on their Wave 1. There's still Wave 2 stuff that was supposed to go to Wave 1 backers, like some of the add-ons and stuff like that. So all of that's gone and not going to happen, which is absolutely terrible for the backers. And again, this is, it is one of the dangers of crowdfunding. The problem is Mythic had come out of the gate swinging as one of those very, appearing to be a reliable Kickstarting company. Reichbusters, Joan of Arc, Super Fantasy Brawl, Steam Watchers. I think there was a couple others. So, those were all made and delivered. They had a good track record. And the lawsuit for intellectual property with Joan of Arc, and then just a lot of overstretching and mismanagement. We got Super Fantasy Brawl, then they did Hell, then they did Darkest Dungeon, then there was Monster Apocalypse, then there was Siege 6, then there was Anastyr, and then they were at their cap of 6 campaigns on Kickstarter, which there's a hard cutoff by Kickstarter saying you can't have more than 6 open campaigns. So Mythic then turned around to GameFound, which they were using as the pledge manager platform for some of their games. They did a crowdfunding on there for Rise of the Necromancers. So that's not being delivered now too. That's out in the winds of, what's happening with that. Is someone going to buy that intellectual property? Because there's all the sales back in December 22, right? And that was Super Fantasy Brawl, Reichbusters, Joan of Arc, and that went to CMON and Monolith Games. Then we had Anasir and Hell of the Last Saga, January of this year, to CMON. So we have Monster Apocalypse, Rise of the Necromancers, and what was the other one? Maybe that was it. I'm going to pull up my Kickstarter real quick. So I mean, there's quite a few things there that, you know, they're not happening. Okay, I'm in here now, so I'll be able to pull up their profile and look at more in what's going on. There it is, Hell of the Last Saga. That was a $235 pledge, by the way. So, which, according to the Kickstarter page, I can still late pledge for that. So lots of things have not been managed and monitored here. Okay, so let's see. Hell of the Last Saga got sold. Darkest Dungeon is not going to be delivered. Fantasy Brawl 2, whatever. Siege 6 may have been completely delivered. Monster Apocalypse, yeah. So and Anasir, and then Rise of the Necromancer. So Monster Apocalypse, excuse me. That was another interesting situation because that was a Privateer Press, Mythic Games kind of co-op there. Privateer Press has been sold for the most part. But one of the things that wasn't mentioned about the sale was Monster Apocalypse. So I'm not sure what the status of that is. CMON did acquire Anasir, and Hell of the Last Saga and Rise of the Necromancer is kind of out in the wind. But that wasn't a big crowdfunding. I think when they launched and pushed that, I think everyone was just like, we're done. You haven't delivered anything. You haven't been communicating. We're not giving you more money. Some people did, but not nearly to the extent of their last really big successful, which was the Anasir, which was $1 million. Prior to that was the Monster Apocalypse, which I'm pulling that one up real quick. That was 1.3. Like, so I mean, these are not small crowdfundings. So, and again, I don't think this is anything intentional that Leo and them did. I think it snowballed, and instead of like stopping and owning up and being open and communicative, they went silent on communications, and things just got worse. Assumptions were made, and all because they couldn't talk, and they didn't want to talk, whether it was embarrassment or they were ashamed or whatever. But that rolls into the next part of this conversation of CMON. They've bought most of the stuff. You know, Monolith did buy a couple. But as I said, they bought Super Fantasy Brawl back December 22. And I want to say it was right around the time frame, October, on GameFound. CMON launched a crowdfunding for Season 2, Round 2, whatever they called it, of Super Fantasy Brawl. And the community kind of blew up on that, as far as on the Discord channel for CMON, there's a lot of excitement. Yes, they've reworked it. I think it was $15. You get a package of cards and everything to bring all the Mythic stuff up to the rules set that CMON has written. That's pretty reasonable. I can't fault them for doing $15. You know, when, you know, it could be a much more substantial price, but, you know, it's already a huge game, so to speak. I want to say I've got the big core box, and I want to say there's 4 more additional boxes I have that are 3 miniatures each. So for $15, updated cards for all that. That's great. CMON's already got like another set of heroes going, but then they've pulled in some intellectual properties, and I almost pulled the trigger on this. It was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mortal Kombat. And just for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles alone, I would have jumped on that. But I really haven't touched the game. I've got some of them primed. I haven't even started painting them. I couldn't justify getting into that. But I was super excited to see that CMON was throwing their weight and the intellectual licensing that they've acquired behind that game and doing some great licensing. And from the community I've seen on their Discord, the community is very excited and behind them on this. Now I haven't seen a lot of traffic on the Facebook community, but the page I'm on is run by Mythic. So, and with them shutting down their main Facebook page, I don't think there's any adminning going on. It's kind of disappointing that they sold these properties and they didn't turn the pages over to the new company, because, or companies in the case of, Monolith. It's like, this page is here, their community's there. You're struggling, if you're going to go out with your hell to hell high, you turn everything over. You don't just, we're going to sell this, but we're not going to give you all the stuff associated with it. We're all the fan bases. Now, to be fair, a lot of people are like, oh no, CMON has this, the game's ruined. That's yet to be seen. I'm still waiting for the email to come in saying, hey, you're a hellbacker, pay this for shipping, which, technically I should have been refunded my shipping by Mythic since I paid for shipping. That was not part of the campaign. That was to get a product delivered. That should be refunded, and it's gone. It is what it is. So, yeah. But the fact that CMON is doing this is still really great, and that's not going to be a small cost to them either to deliver to these backers that Mythic left out to hang out and dry, to get them a product. Is it going to be the same game? Absolutely not. Am I a little disappointed in that? Maybe, but it depends on how CMON does it. I mean, they do make my all-time favorite game with Cthulhu, which I have gotten my Season 3 for. Season 5 is currently up for backing right now, which I am signed up on that. I'm less bitter about backing that now that I've received my stuff, but when I first initially backed it, I still haven't received my stuff. A little grumpy. But it is what it is. The last part that I'm going to sign off on here is something else. It's just it's plaguing the industry. Delays in shipping. One of the other games, it wasn't a Kickstarter, it was just a pre-order. Like, it had already been designed, they're just reprinting it, adding a couple things here and there, and shipping it out was the Metal Gear Solid board game by CMON. And that was one of my favorite games, video games, back in the early 2000s when I was in the Marines, sitting in the barracks just playing video games, because board gaming was not what it is now then, and whatnot, and, didn't really have the luxury of hauling around and lugging a bunch of stuff, like Sox does, because, he's married and he has a larger allowance for that kind of stuff. I was supposed to get that at the beginning of the year, and CMON has promised that is still going to arrive this month. I don't have a lot of hope for that now at this point, since we are, third of the way through the month, and haven't received any notice of it. I'll pull up my backer kit right now, because that's where it is through. Pledges and surveys. Your surveys. So yeah, at this point, it still says your order has been locked. And they did send out things saying last called for address changes. They said estimated delivery was 5 of 24. We're way past that, and as far as I know, it still has not hit a container ship to head to the U.S. So that is what it is. But again, it's one of those things where it is CMON. They do deliver at this point. They are still doing what everyone thought Mythic was capable of doing, and then Mythic wasn't. So, and at this point, I don't foresee that happening with CMON, just because they do have this down to such a science now, and they do have, I think, better management. They continue to update, they continue to respond, they don't close down communications. I know I'm supposed to have some bright spots on this little vlog here for the end of the year, but it's it's been kind of a quiet, depressing game year for me. With this taking the forefront of, this really cool, magnificent game that, I was supposed to got sold, and I'm just now waiting on pins and needles. Yes, I do have other stuff here. I've still got stuff to play. I'm looking at trying to get rid of stuff and cull it down because, you get too much. So there's that. But it is the end of the year, and it is one of those things to talk about. Now, I really don't have anything else. Like I said, I didn't plan on writing this down. I wanted to just have like an honest conversation, just how I felt, and not have it pre-planned. Really, the only thing I did was look at the dates and times to make sure I was accurate in quoting of when things happen. So, I am excited though, because I do have my new stuff for Cthulhu, and I'm going to have some time over Christmas break to break that down. I'm going to, get some unboxing recorded of that here in the next couple days and show that for folks who are interested. But yeah, it's been kind of a lackluster year for me, in my opinion. I'm very looking forward to 2025. Hopefully things get better, game wise for me, and just in the industry, because there's been a lot of things. We're still seeing ripple effects from conflicts and shipping crises and all of that, and just when we thought we were getting back to normalcy, it kicks back up. A couple episodes ago we talked about shipping prices and stuff. So I mean, it's never going to be not affecting the industry, but and it is, it's just a hobby, so it's not the foremost thing that people worry about. So, but to not be a complete Debbie Downer, trying to think of something else positive. Let's see, something positive. We did have our guest on with a successful Kickstarter campaign that is currently running still, and that is going to fund, and so we're going to see that the process of that getting created. I wish him the best on that as well. And yeah, sorry, this is kind of a depressing little vlog update for the year, but it is what it is. Here's to 2025, and take some time, play more games.
All of this year's episodes have been brought to you by Valhalla Hobby. We appreciate Valhalla Hobby for supporting us. It's a relationship we've really appreciated for a number of reasons. First and foremost, genuinely good people. The other thing is that Valhalla Hobby, like us, have a real passion for the niche end of this community. I'm literally just on the front page of the website here, and look at the list of games that is on that front page. Now, obviously, yes, you definitely have your usuals, like your Warhammer 40k, your Horus Heresies, so on and so forth. But we also have Bushido, Drop Fleet Commander, Drop Zone Commander, Armored Clash, Dystopian Wars, and much, much more. They have a huge range. It's really, really interesting to go through it. Their prices are phenomenal as well. I would highly recommend checking them out. If you use the code TABLED at checkout, you'll get 5% off your first order over $100. Thank you very much to Valhalla Hobby for supporting us, for continuing to be good people, and thank you for supporting the people that support us. It's a very important reminder that any time you crowdfund something, you are taking a risk. Every single one of these websites warn you about it, and people quite frequently ignore that warning. But you need to remember. And we'll get into our next conversation, which is the second half of the video from Major Socks, where he starts talking about his hobby. He has some really awesome games that he was excited for and purchased. He has some actually really cool looking hills that I don't remember him showing off. Maybe I have a very bad memory. It wasn't the best year for me either. But I'll leave you with Socks, and I'll be back with you shortly.
In the meantime, some stuff that I've been happy that I've been able to work on this year is I got Sultanate for Dystopian Wars, and in doing so I got a bunch of these little portals that I used some glazing to make it a little more transparent, but then just use contrast paint, some blues, kind of a teal to give it that effect. And I absolutely love these things. I have about 8 of these. Plan on getting some more, just because the Sultanate use portals like that quite a bit. And I may need them for Armor Clash as well. We'll see when that comes out, when that fiction finally comes out for Armor Clash late next year. Another thing is I got the Hell Caesar Epic Series, so the 10 mil scale, or 15, it's about 15 mil scale, I should say. Absolutely love that game as well. Started testing some paint schemes. As you can see here from some of my Roman cavalry, I'm just trying to choose the colors that I want for their sword or their shields, the horses themselves, their cloaks, that kind of stuff. Just kind of getting an idea of how I want to paint my Roman army. Definitely going to have them set up so that it's kind of different units have different colors. That way you can distinguish them on the board a lot easier instead of them just being all red or all pick your color. With my Carthaginians, they'll be a little bit more hodgepodge mixed together in terms of uniformity in their uniforms. It'll be more mixed just because that's how they had their, especially the allied troops. For both sides, they're kind of just whatever they had on their backs is what they showed up in battle, so they don't really have much uniformity in terms of the uniforms. Another thing I'm happy that I've been able to work on this year is I've always wanted some nice green hills. I have the rocky ones from Battlefield in a Box, and I tried to get their kind of rounded hills, but they were out of stock. I tried to order them through my local game store before I moved up here. They couldn't get them. And so what I did is I just took I went to Home Depot and I just took some insulating foam and hot wire gun or hot wire cutter, foam cutter, and just cut them up. I'll scoot back a little bit so you can kind of see it and kind of see the scale. So I stacked 2 sheets on this one, whereas this one is just a single layer sheet, and just cut the slopes. Took some sheetrock molding, or the mud, sheetrock mud, and just kind of smoothed it out after I had cut it up to kind of give it some rounded effects. And then I spray painted it brown. That way, as I put the flocking down, the little grass flocking, the dirt could still kind of show through it, so it wasn't just a white. And I've used those a couple of times. I absolutely love them. The slopes, even though this is a double layer, the slopes on this are still, I'll kind of show you, they're still not so steep that models fall off. So it's great, especially my little 15 mil, my Epic Hail, my Caesar game. I haven't tried it with Drop Zone Commander with the flyers yet. So that may be a little difficult for them if they decide to land on the slope itself with their base. So I'll try that probably over the course of the next year. Something else that I've been happy to finally get to is my little painting station back here in the back. You can see it back there. That's from Hobby Zone. Absolutely love it. I have been wanting to use it more. I haven't been able to with school. Keeping me busy still. However, it's nice to have all my stuff organized now instead of in Tupperware boxes and wherever. My goal is to see what the next semester is like over the next couple of months, starting in the next year, and try and do hobby at least once a week, whether that's painting or assembling more stuff, because I still got a lot of Dystopian Wars for both Imperium and Sultanate to assemble. I've got my Gettysburg American Civil War stuff that I need to assemble still, and even some more Epic Hail Caesar to assemble. So I've got some stuff that I need to assemble and I want to finish up. So I want to try and do a hobby at least once a week next year. That's my goal. So viewers, keep me on track with that. Keep me up to date and make sure I'm doing that stuff. That way I have stuff to show more than just, yep, I've done nothing during our Hobby Time Zone segments. But that's what I've got. Thanks for all you that support the channel. Patreons, whether you're subscribing on YouTube, whatever it may be. Again, thanks to Valhalla Hobby, who sponsors us as well. Great support there. And we'll catch you around on the channel.
The next couple of stories are going to be from me. And I want to start with Drop Fleet Commander. This is a release that we had been waiting for a long time. Not just because we've been fans of the game for such a long time. It's literally why we all met, for those of you that don't already know. But also because a couple of years ago when TT Combat released that 1.5 book, although I had some positive things to say, my opinion at the time, and I said this, was that it was a book that probably shouldn't have happened because they should have just done second edition. There had been issues with Drop Fleet Commander since the original version of the game that needed to have been addressed, and that didn't address them. To be fair, it wasn't trying to address them. It's my opinion that the reason they decided to do that is because they didn't feel they were ready, which is a very good reason. The reason I wanted to talk about this, though, is because of all of the releases that happened this year, that's the one that I held the most weight on. That's the one that I had been waiting for the longest time. Well, actually, that's probably not entirely true. I had been waiting for Crete since before that existed. But for a rule set point of view, this is the rule set that I had been wanting to see for a long time. In the early days of Drop Fleet Commander, there was originally one podcast called The Hot LZ, which is how we all met. A number of times we tried to figure out how to fix the problem with ground combat. We weren't the only ones. Like, there were two others that started after us that also tried to address the issue. And I've said this on the podcast, I'm going to say it again now. The solution that Dave and the team came up with for ground combat is worlds better than any of the solutions that any of us came up with. And I'm including the solutions that came on podcasts that included TT Combat staff or Hawk staff at the time. This solution is better than all of the other solutions. There was 10 to 15 solutions at the time. But it goes a little bit further than that. Because TT Combat could have released a rulebook, the community would have been happy. Well, most of the community would have been happy. Whenever you release a new rulebook, there's always going to be part of that community that's like, nope, I don't like this. We discussed some of those points on the podcast. Most famously, battle groups are gone. You still have groups, but not battle groups anymore. One of the main points of difference for Drop Fleet doesn't exist anymore. And that was gotten rid of for, personally, I feel a very good reason. It's not something I'd ever consider to be a problem, but it is a point where the game stops. And essentially what they wanted to do was remove all of those things that stop you from playing the game. I'm yet to... I think they did a really good job of that. But the reason I say it's not just about that is that TT Combat went above and beyond, in my opinion. We had investment in new plastic sprues, which generally speaking isn't something TT Combat do. We haven't seen new plastic sprues for Drop Fleet since the game came out. At all. So that's big. But there's 20 different frames that was designed and are in the process of being released. That's massive. That's a huge investment into the game from TT Combat. That, at least from the initial outset, appears to have been invested very well. From everything that I'm seeing, the models look phenomenal. They've invested into that game very, very heavily. And in ways that we should be encouraging. Especially given that people want to see more of this. Like, people want to see dreadnoughts, right? In plastic. Because it'll be so much better than the resin stuff. I would buy the hell out of them. That will only happen if it's selling well. It appears to be selling very well. From everything that I'm seeing, Drop Fleet appears to be going very well. And I'm putting the credit for that I mean, yes, the community get credit as well, but TT Combat have invested into things that the fans have asked for and delivered on them in not just a rulebook, but genuinely in a very positive way. And I think that should be encouraged. The last story I want to touch on today is 2024 for me. In all honesty, it's been a lot more challenging this year than I've probably made clear. But not all of it's been challenges. At the beginning of this year, I set myself a couple of challenges. One of which was like a genuine New Year's resolution that I've stuck with. It's possible that some of you may have even heard the results of this on the podcast. If at any point you've heard George telling me off for starting to say a joke, I can nigh on guarantee you it's because I had started to make a joke at my own expense, which is something that I made a pledge this year that I was going to stop doing. Because it's something that I've been doing since I was very young. It's something that most likely started because of depression at the time, or a coping mechanism for bullying at the time, that I've always just kept on. And the reason I do it today is generally because I'm trying to be funny. But it has negative connotations to it that I quite frequently get told off for. And this year was the year where I was like, you know what? These people have a point. I'm going to stop doing that. So first and foremost, thank you, George, for helping. He's not been the only one. There's been a few other people that's been helping me with that as well. It's probably something I will always continue to do because it is part of who I am. But I'm glad that I have people that will call me on it and try to help me to be better to myself as a result. Truth be told, I've also struggled this year with burnout quite a lot. The hobby output that I've had this year has probably not been as good as other years. There's been a few things, like the accident is an obvious one. There's been other things as well, but I've kind of had on and off moments with hobby this year that I've really struggled with. But the other thing I tried to do this year is I tried to stop making as many impulse purchases as I had been doing in previous years. I have used the podcast as an excuse for purchases way too many times in the past, and I was trying to be better with my finances and actually be a little bit smarter. Because Lord knows there's way too many things in that garage that I've never touched after purchasing and unboxing them. It's one of the reasons why the release schedule was slowed down a bit this year, because I was trying to be smarter with my money. I'm very proud of the fact that I did that. There have still been some impulse purchases. One of the things that I did buy, some of them were impulse, some of them are not, but I started buying rule sets quite frequently this year. So I bought Burrows and Badges, and I actually unboxed some of those minis on the channel. That was an impulse purchase. For more than one reason, though. I mean, yes, it was an impulse purchase, and it's something I'm trying to be better with. But the thing that led me to start doing was buying more rule sets. I bought Deathship 1 by Snarling Badger Studios. I bought Deathship. Is it Deathship? Deathship 1 by Joseph McCulloch. Burrows and Badges I mentioned. There are others, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. But the reason I started doing it is because I am working on a game of my own. What I started doing is looking at what else is out there and trying to figure out what I want my project to look like at the end of the day. Because make no mistake, I intend for Entropy City to be a product at the end of the day. That is my goal. I've been more careful with my money this year, and I'm very happy that I was. I tried to focus my hobby purchases this year on just the things that I wanted. You could argue that the Crute was the exception to that, and that was because I had been waiting for them for so long. I don't even play 40k, but I had to have these because I'd been waiting for them for that many years. I had to own them. So I've tried to focus on that. Obviously, the accident was part of that as well, because I had to get a new motorbike. For those that don't know, somebody ran a stop sign through me and my motorbike. I'm very, very lucky. I was off work for 2 months. I, by rights, probably should have been off a lot longer, but I got very lucky. I returned to work when I should have. I did not go back to work earlier than I should have. but given what had happened, I should have struggled for a lot longer than I did. I'm not saying that I am completely pain-free. I'm not. Like, my shoulder still irritates me occasionally. I kind of suspect that it always will at this stage. But a lot of the finances that could go into the hobby has been preparing the new bike because all of the upgrades and stuff on my old bike aren't here anymore. So I wanted to buy new handlebars. I needed a new way to carry luggage. I've been setting it up so that it can be my forever bike. One of the things I'm going to try to do next year is try to be a little bit healthier with my time. One of the things that we're discussing at the moment behind the scenes is trying to evolve the podcast and shift up the format of the podcast a little bit, which isn't to say that it's going to be a completely different podcast, but we're trying to be a little bit more individual about the podcast. One of the frequent comments we've had this year has been, you guys that make really good content, I don't understand why you don't have a larger following. One of the things we're going to try and do is lean more into the things that people appear to enjoy from us, and maybe reduce the things that everybody else does as well. But watch this space on that. One thing I'm very cautious of is I don't want it to be an overnight decision. I want the evolution to happen slowly. Like I said, the conversation is already happening. It is something that you will hopefully start to see creeping in over the next few months. So our episode is coming towards an end. I do have a last-minute addition thanks to Ben, and thank you very much, and I genuinely mean that, Ben, because I know you had an extremely busy week this week. Ben's thoughts was that he's really enjoyed working on the Bushido models that he's painted this year. He's really enjoyed relaxing and painting and challenging himself with new techniques and schemes and colour choices. We've been lucky enough to get sneak behind the scenes of a lot of that work that he's been doing. He's been openly sharing his hobby quite a bit with us, and with the Gaming at the Guys as well. It's been really nice to see him continue to develop his already very nice paint techniques, honestly. His favourite model of the year was the Bushido Hoshi Odamu, which is one of the Minimoto clans. It was the really big guy with the giant long spear. And being that it's his faction as well, it obviously helps. We will continue with our Bushido series next year. We had plans to record more of that at the end of this year, but kind of time caught up with us. This episode has been recorded a week and a half before you will see it. Our Patreons will get to see this at some point tomorrow at time of recording, perhaps later tonight. But they will have seen it much, much earlier than the rest of the world. This episode will be going live the same day that the audio does as well. If by chance you are listening to the audio, thank you very much for listening. I would highly recommend checking out the video editions of this podcast, because there are occasions during this where people have shown things on camera that obviously you can't see with your ears. This is something that happens semi-regularly on the podcast. I do believe that the video edition of the podcast is the superior way of enjoying it. Doesn't mean you always have to watch. You can just have it playing in the background. But hopefully you will enjoy that. This last point is going to be something more personal. This goes out to everybody on the podcast that's contributed content, but that's not why I want to say this. Michelle, you will probably be one of the first people to hear this. If it's not you, it'll probably be Shay or JP or one of the other members. If by chance you do hear this first, go and poke George and Major Socks without telling them why, and tell them that they need to listen to the end of this episode. The reason I tell you not to tell them why is I think it's more important for them to hear this for themselves. For those of you that reached out during my accident when I was struggling, I want to express how much I appreciate you. There were times during that recovery process where I was extremely frustrated. Frustrated with not being able to leave the house, frustrated that I'd lost my bike, frustrated that nothing seemed to be happening about it. There were points where I was really, really struggling, and points where I was trying to put on a brave face. There are people in my real life that did this as well. There are some people that reached out that I really didn't expect to hear from. And I just want to express how much I appreciate that. Because the fact of the matter is that if you guys hadn't have been doing that, I don't think I would have had the motivation to have gotten back to a normalcy of life as fast as I did. I keep on talking about how I feel like I was lucky. And yes, sure, I was. And yes, sure, it was a lot of work. But I don't feel I would have had the motivation to push through the way that I did if it wasn't for you guys. And if you reached this point in the podcast, I only have one last thing to say, regardless of who you are. Reach out to a friend. Doesn't matter who it is. And just check in with them and see how they are. For no other reason than because there's someone that you care about. And just reach out. Have a conversation, especially if it's somebody that you haven't spoken to in a while. You don't need to tell them why. You don't need to mention that somebody suggested that you do it. I'm mentioning this because I lost a friend last week. And if that had have been somebody that I hadn't have caught up with recently, I think I would be struggling a lot more than I am at the moment. You will not regret reaching out to a friend.